You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur.
Come on, y'all!
Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz. And today is a revisit of an incredible, wide-ranging interview with Ceci Johnson. There is so much to learn, so much to be inspired by. She also was on just last January on a follow-up interview, episode number 320. You could also hear her before that on a panel with Sylvia Weinstock and Christian Oth, episode 223. So enjoy today's revisit of my original interview with Ceci Johnson.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Well, and we were talking, I think it was sometime last year, but you were getting ready to move. And so we wanted to wait till you had this beautiful new office.
Yes, finally it's here and we love it. It's great to be in a new space and build it up to make it be the right brand presence and, start fresh.
Well, I noticed even the restroom, the way the walls were, I don't know what to call it, but it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, decorated in a way I've never seen before.
Oh, thank you. That's actually my paintings. I made we made the watercolor, the murals.
Oh my God, no kidding.
Yeah, they're pretty fabulous bathrooms, huh?
Jeez. Well, but why not, right? Why wouldn't every single element brand-wise be all tied together?
Exactly.
Like, why not the bathroom?
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, I want to build a lifestyle brand so it goes beyond just the invitations and I, have a beautiful canvas to play with. So why not?
Yeah. Well, I want to find out, where all this came from for you. And I did find some information about you that you were the daughter of a successful business owner and that the entrepreneurial spirit was sparked at an early age because what I read is that many valuable lessons that you put into practice in your own company were learned while growing up. And this is fascinating to me. Listening to your father in his office from your bedroom next door. Like he was there and it would actually, because most kids don't want to listen to that kind of talk.
I know. I guess my dad would always say you learn by osmosis. So we shared a wall and I would hear the way he would handle his clients or just watching him and his business ethics and what he would do. And he'd teach me lessons and give me the good one-liners that always stuck with me. Like, S plus S equals success, which to me was like, sweat and sacrifice equals success and that you should never give up and constantly work for it. And it doesn't come easy. And your hardest day only lasts 24 hours, which I think of all the time.
I could use that one.
Yeah, it's a great one. And he was just very, very, just a good role model for me from a business perspective. And
well, how young were you when he was talking to you about like those one-liners? Is this just as a little girl even?
I think, well, to be honest, I'm the oldest of three girls and he was desperately wished he had a son, I think. So he didn't really necessarily start all the business talk. I was listening to him and like learning through him. Mm-hmm. But the advice really came when I was like, Dad, I'm going to start my own business. And I think it really like clicked and the light bulb went off in his head. And he's like, okay, I'm here to help you. And I have all this insight to share with you. And he was just a very good sounding board.
Wow. Do you remember some of the lessons that really stuck out for you from him in the beginning? That you still use today?
I think what I said, like those two quotes definitely resonate. And because it's not easy to start a business, it's like, and to maintain it and keep it sustainable. I'm like on my 15th year. So, it is a roller coaster ride of ups and downs. And I think he's always taught us, even just growing up as children, just that we have to be strong and go after your dreams and never give up. And like that persistence pays and that you always have to be, thankful and polite and never be too big for your britches, he would say.
Jeez, I love that he would say that.
And so those sort of just natural intuition or just being were really pinnacles, I think, of how I run my business and just, from a business ethics point of view as well.
When you mentioned the roller coaster, that really struck me. I remember seeing that somewhere. I don't know if it was a website or an article, but you had said, quote, the biggest ones that rise to the top is to have patience. And we're talking about advice you were referring to.
Yes.
Success doesn't happen overnight. It's a wild roller coaster of ups and downs and twists and turns beyond what you could ever imagine. I can relate to that. But the most important thing is not to give up. Keep your eyes on the prize. Keep your passion, the why you started this business in the first place. Keep feeding into that and great things will happen.
Exactly.
Can you say more about that?
I was very naive when I started my business and I've always been that kind of just go after it girl that, even when I was a kid, I would go door to door and sell like whatever I could to like earn my Barbie dolls. Like my parents taught me early on, they were like, if you want something bad enough, you have to work for it and earn it. And I would be like, okay, I want a Barbie doll. And he's like, all right, it's 5 cents a leaf and 10 cents for a snail. And I'd go in the backyard and I'd find as many as I could and cash them in and ride my bike to the toy store.
That's great.
And, buy my prize, I guess. Sounds kind of funny. But what now, as I'm grown up as a businesswoman, it's really taught me that sense of that you've got to work for it and earn it. And I've never, there's been no investors or no Daddy Warbucks sponsoring me. Like I built this from the ground up all by myself, literally with a dream and a passion. But when I launched my company, I was like, I'm a graphic designer and I came from the web design world before and print. But anyways, I launched my own website and I thought, I'm going to be famous overnight. It's going to be so easy. Like my website looks amazing because of course I designed it.
And now everybody's going to order immediately.
My phone's going to be ringing off the hook and it's going to be great. And it was not. It was crickets. And it was like, oh my gosh, it was a big eye opener, meaning that literally, I think of it as like, it was just going to be an easy straight arrow up and I'd just be like, done. But instead, it's that wild, crazy roller coaster ride of twists and turns and knots and like ups and downs and plenty of Friday nights where you're just like crying your eyes out, being like, is it worth it? Am I doing the right thing? And then the next day the phone rings and you get this amazing client and you're like, okay, yes, So I think a lot of times people feel like success just happens like that and it just comes easy, but it may look glamorous on the outside, but it's really not. It's all that sweat and tears.
Thinks, whether it's an actor, an actress, a singer, business person, even in this industry, right?
Yeah.
We look at the big iconic planners, whoever, and you just assume that, oh, they've made it, right? Like maybe they had the struggle. Like I was talking recently to Preston, and he was talking about how even as recently as 3-4 years ago, he had a rough year.
Right. It happens.
And it does happen.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I think that there's a misconceived notion that you've made it. And I feel like you can't ever have that attitude because then someone else will, replace you in a heartbeat. You have to constantly be humble and constantly reinvent yourself and constantly just keep at it to keep that position and keep going.
Well, and to keep that passion, like part of your quote was, if I remember correctly, to almost bring yourself back to the passion that you had when you started it. Like, how do you keep that going throughout? Do you feel like you lose it once in a while?
I mean, there's definitely hard days and there's definitely days where you're like, oh my gosh, you just get the beat down and whatever, and you're stressed. And it's just like, how am I going to pull all this off in 24 hours? And it's just intense. But I think you have to keep coming back to that why. And that to me, it's the passion and thinking of the good things, because the negative can get you,
Yeah.
And it can really like take you down that negative spiral. And then especially with social media now, you go online and everyone looks better than you. And it's like this facade and you have to just be like, okay, wait, put the blinders on and focus on the why and the good stuff and the positive. If it's the compliments that you get from your clients, or if it's for me, like the heartbeat of our business is creating beautiful things for people and making their lives, like telling their story through art and making their lives that much better and more beautiful. And that smile and that excitement and that wow that comes out of their mouths when they see it. And that's like the happiness, like we're in the business of happiness in a way.
Well, and it's interesting when you talked a moment ago about looking for the good things. It's interesting for some reason. I don't know why is it almost the default as a human that you go down that rabbit hole so quickly. Like to me, why isn't that the default that everything is wonderful? Instead, it takes a lot of work and effort, right? To look, it's interesting too, Ceci, you said about the good things. I need to bring this back. So with my team, I have 2 teams in the businesses, but I remember some time ago, we would have we have weekly conference calls. And for a period of time, we would start with each person saying something they're grateful for, related to the business. And it was such a great way to start the call. And I'm realizing as I'm speaking to, I have to bring it back, just to have that right?
Definitely, because everyone thinks it's so easy. It looks so easy. And then I feel like we do this and I do it. There's times where you're just like, oh my gosh, like, why is it so hard for me? But reality is like, we're all going through it. And, on social, you always want to put your best foot forward. You don't want to talk about all the bad stuff, but don't feel like it's terrible when you start comparing. And so I always try to be like, all right, shut that off. I just need to focus on what's important to me and the why I want to do what we're doing and the mission we're on and go towards that.
Where do you think because it is a struggle for a lot of us. Where do you think that came from for you, that you can do that so well, that you could stick with what is the good stuff? And I mean, again, I understand, crying on a Friday night, right? I heard you say that.
You get strong after a while.
But what do you think that is? Is it come back again to how you grew up?
I don't know. I mean, maybe I think a lot has to do with it. And nothing's ever come easy for me, to be honest. And I've just been that very determined person. And I think that I've learned from a very early age, even in third grade, like, you just got to make your own path, and like, nobody's going to give it to you. No one's going to like hand it to you, and you can't like play that, oh, poor me. It's like, I'm not lucky, that she's so lucky. And it's not about luck. It's never about luck. It's about making sure that you're like,
or creating your own luck. Let's call it that.
Creating your own luck. Yeah, exactly. And really going for it and putting yourself out there and going to that networking party, or working the extra hour or 2 or 5 to get it done, and go that extra distance. So you prove yourself, and, asking for what you need, and not being afraid to stand up for yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you, So, so I don't know. I just feel like you just kind of, no matter how hard it is, you just got to take a deep breath. And I know this maybe sounds cliche, but you just got to pick yourself up and keep going. And I don't know. It's not that it comes easy. You just get tough after a while.
Yeah, I don't feel that it's cliche, because as simple as that sounds, it is so a concept that is really hard to just absorb completely and just live that way on a regular basis.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it as there's 2 roads, right? It's a crossroads. You're in the middle, and you could go down the negative road of just like, oh, well, nothing's going to happen for me. Like, I'm just going to be sad and nothing's going to come my way. Or you create those opportunities and you go after it, and you raise your hand and say, I'll do that. Or, hey, by the way, I love what you're doing. Can I design this for you? That's actually how my company started. I went to the COO of I was working in the web world. I missed print so much that I just literally walked up to her and I was like, hey, here's an invitation that I happen to have done for a friend back home, and I just want to do more of it. So can I do yours? And she was like, I love it. Name your price, like, done, you're doing it.
You just went for it? Wow.
Yeah. And then I just started, and it just kind of happened.
I want to kind of go back to that point, because I also love finding out about these big turns in the road and taking that risk, right? And really going for it. So from what I understand, theater and arts were a huge way of life for you, right? And you were getting a degree at, am I saying this right? Cal Poly San Luis Obispo? Right, in art and design. And you did a short stint designing national bridal registry kits for federal department stores. Before we move on then to the web consultant world, so here you were having some experience in the bridal world. How did that come to be? Did you have a passion for weddings?
No, nothing, never. And I'm definitely not that girl that like grew up with my bridal book and like my wedding dreams and like, I mean, I always dreamed of falling in love, and like I'm very much a hopeless romantic, but never ever about like my perfect wedding. And so it's really ironic, because my first job right out of college, my parents wouldn't let me move to New York. I had my heart set on New York. I'm from San Diego. Okay. They're like, nope, you're staying home. Like everyone's told me no my entire life.
Sweet
I'm like,
girl is
why?
not going to the big city. Yeah.
Exactly. My dad was like, why would you ever want to move to the most expensive city in the world and like give up paradise? Because we grew up in San Diego. And I'm like, Dad, there's more to life than the perfect wave. Like, I have to go. I need to do stuff.
And how about perfect weather?
Yeah,
too?
That's true. And perfect tan and perfect everything. And I don't know. It was just I had this itching inside of me, this desire to go. And maybe because I was in theater growing up and I dreamed of being a star on Broadway, I was like, oh, I got to go to New York. But New York to me is just the center of creativity and independence and innovation. And like, I feel like New York just embraces anything and everything, and you can go for it after you can build your dreams here. It's the city of dreams, right? Yeah. I mean, you have to be extremely tough and determined, because it can eat you alive in heartbeat. But I immediately felt at home here. So actually my first job, my dad made me stay home. So I was like, fine, I'll get the best design job in San Diego, which I did. And my first job was to design the bridal registry kit for Macy's and Bloomingdale's. Yeah. And it was like the job that no one wanted, because they're like, oh, it's wedding. So I was like, I'll take it. And I approached it as like, right out of school, and designed it really beautifully and had all these amazing printing techniques. And this is like graphic designer, like nerd talk, when I'm like doing all these cool printing techniques. And the colleague next to me was engaged, and she loved it. And she's like, I love all the concepts that you're doing. Like, can you please design my wedding invitation? And that was the moment when I was like, Sure. No problem. I'm happy to. And I took it on as like a side project. And I was like, I'm going to approach this completely different than a boring, normal, like what was out there at the time was just a standard, 5x7 or smaller card, flat card, really boring in my mind. And it was a very antiquated industry where it was just like simple, boring stuff. So I made it into this book and it had multiple pages and it told their story. And I had all this custom art and it was just really, really special. And that piece is, I think, the tipping point because then when I moved to New York, I got hired to do web design and I missed the paper. And that's when I went to the COO and I was like, hey, can I do this for you? I heard you're engaged. And I just kind of, before I knew it, like, literally word of mouth, people were like, why aren't you doing this? And I was schlepping my portfolio and stuff to Starbucks and meeting people on the side from my job. And before I knew it, it was friends of friends of friends. And,
How old were you at this time?
Oh my gosh, 26, I think.
Yeah. So mid-20s. It's interesting too, a moment ago, I really caught when you said that there was just this kind of boring standard way of doing things. I mean, I can relate when I came into the music side and I had a similar attitude about quote unquote wedding bands. I'm like, wait a minute, why is it like this? And isn't it interesting? It's not like a deliberate thought of, okay, I'm going to think of something new. It's just there, right?
Yeah.
And you don't see any other way of doing it.
Exactly.
And that becomes innovation.
Right. Yeah. And at the time I was like, well, maybe I should study the wedding industry because my clients were telling me like, why are you out there? Like, we've been looking everywhere for someone like you. And I'm like, really? Okay. And so I studied it and I realized what was offered was literally just big clunky binders that you would open and it was like a dusty old option and they call it custom, custom design.
I think I remember seeing this.
And literally it was like centered text and like, you could customize it by changing like purple to pink and like a starfish and I'm like, that's not custom. Yeah. Custom is my imagination. Like custom is unlimited, like design creativity, like innovation, like birds can fly out of it if I want to. Like this is not custom. And I realized that was what, because essentially the general public realized like custom is making, putting your name on it. And in retail, that's technically a custom order. But from the design world and from a designer point of view, that was not custom, right? It's like thinking now I call it couture because I had to analyze it or compare it to like fashion, right? There's like the off the rack, which is, your standard, and then there's couture. And so that's ultimately what I started doing. And
well, how did you manifest it in terms of working with your first clients to do that? Like how much was it more at that time your vision and ideas, or right from the beginning were you really, having these conversations with them and getting a sense of, well, what is their style and how do I interpret that?
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of just the way I work. That's who I am. Like I'm a designer true and I'm a passionate artist. So for me, I'm not going to sit there and be like, well, what do you want? Tell me. And then I'll just do it. I'm going to like get to know you and have a very in-depth, like personal conversation and get inspired by you. And then I'm going to add my design and creativity and what if we tried this? And wouldn't it be amazing if we did this? And instead of it being like this or a flat card, let's try it like this, and suddenly amazing ideas happen.
But how do you start to get a sense of this from them? Or do you have some particular line of questioning, or are you just having like some social conversation?
Like a first date.
Right.
You just get to know them. You ask them questions. I mean, simple things about, of course, if it's a wedding, then like, why did you pick the venue that you did? Like, tell me your story. How did you guys meet? Like, I get clues by what they're wearing, what their style's like. It can go into their home, what their vibe of their apartment is, or, that they're obsessed with their dog, or I don't know, or why they picked Italy. Tell me, like, is there meaning behind it?
It's all informing.
I'm always digging until I get that like nugget of inspiration to be like, okay, that's what we're going to build off of, because otherwise it's just sort of shallow. Like there's not much there. And I only want to design with purpose.
Can you give me a story or two of any that, you've had a gazillion of them, but are there any in particular that stand out to you?
Oh my gosh, it's like asking who's your favorite child.
Right.
They're all really good.
Yeah.
Gosh, for a wedding, you mean? Like,
sure. Yeah, we'll start with one because I can't wait to also get to all the other stuff you do. Weddings is one portion of what you do.
They're all really personal stories. one couple that are coming to mind. The couple was getting married at their house in Charleston, and they loved my paintings. And I flew in and got to see their home personally, took pictures from the angles that I was inspired by, and came back and actually painted the house. And that became a commemorative piece of art for them, that it was their save the date as well as a wonderful keepsake. I mean, that's a more like really literal, like personal, what do you want to call it? Like making of their home. But I think just getting inspired by what their vibe of their event is or who they are, creating a custom crest with like personal details by it. Where I had a bride who once was like, I'm having this beautiful garden romantic wedding and I need you to include Harry Potter in it.
Oh,
we were like, okay, so how do we make that beautiful? So it's just, you never know. They're all so different, and that's what makes it so fun. Because really
I'm also thinking, I mean, you're clearly so passionate and enthusiastic, and I'm sure that clients, it's an experience in of itself for them to work with you. They must so much enjoy this collaborative sense that they get to have with you.
Yeah.
And so I'm also thinking that there's such an emotional element to it. Like, I understand I was asking you to describe in words, but isn't there a part that's indescribable, which is this vibe, part of the connection, the feeling you get with them, which manifests in a way that doesn't necessarily have words to put on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a bit of that emotional connection in that, just like
the excitement.
I don't know, like
spark.
Just the connection. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, it just depends on, I can get a sense of immediately who they are. And I dream up in my head really quickly. Like, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do for you. And it's just like a weird gift that I have, I guess, that I can come up with ideas right on the fly. And I'm like, all right, this is what we're going to do, you know? And like, what do you think? And they're like, yeah, amazing. We have an honest conversation. They might be like, nah, that's too much for me. And I'm like, okay, what about this? Like, let's change this. Let's do that. So it is that very creative and collaborative, fun experience.
Is it like an aha moment that you have? You must have that all the time throughout this process with them. Like, I got it.
Definitely.
Like inside you're telling yourself.
Oh, I say it out loud. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is what we're going to do. And then I just sketch it out in front of them or show them, and then it happens.
For a moment, to stick with weddings, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, save the date. I had read also, you said just as important as what you wear, so is your image on paper, right? It's the first, and isn't the first touch point to save the date? Can you say more about that? I'm going to say it again. Just as important as what you wear, so is your image on paper.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, in a way, think of it like the movie trailer, right? Like if you had a really bad movie trailer, no one would go to the movie. So the wedding or the event is like the movie, right? And then my job as the invitation designer is the save the date is the first touch point. And it's that moment that you're making that first impression. And then the invitation then comes next. And we're really creating this branded cohesiveness that, to me, I don't know, I joke that I'm like, would you wear sweatpants to your own wedding? Like, you got to like take yourself seriously in a way. I mean, not to be boring and stodgy and quiet and serious. I don't mean it like that, but I mean, like, it's your wedding. It's in a special event. And the save the date is that first impression, that first moment that really says, this is going to be a great event. And, you're spending so much money. Like, I don't care how big your budgets are, big or small, you're still putting a lot of time and effort into that wedding and the planning. And now couples are doing it like year and a half, a year, 6 months even. That's a long time, So imagine if you didn't send something beautiful or something that made the right statement and you had a very small turnout, It's better to get all the loved ones there, I think.
Well, and I think for, those of us receiving it, we may not necessarily exactly identify and have this whole very specific analysis of but it's the feeling, right, that we get, which expresses who they are.
Totally. And the biggest compliment for me is when our clients are like, you just got us. Like, it's so us. And I'm getting thousands of texts from all my friends that are like, this is so beautiful. It's so you. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just totally you.
Yeah.
And it is the ultimate. I really, really believe that. And also, you have to think like a lot of nowadays, like there are multiple events on one day. So you want, if someone's opening a pile of mail and you want yours to be the one they attend to, you got to make sure it looks good.
What about dealing with companies and brands? You've done some very big partnerships and some of your clients in that world are really enormous. Can you tell me something about the process with that? It's
very much the same, but it's instead of a personal brand, it's a company, right? So whether it's a nonprofit, like we do the Skin Cancer Foundation, and if it's nonprofit, my goal is to make sure they look really good, but not too ostentatious because, it's a charity.
Right.
And so it's part of a design challenge to ensure we're sending that right, proper message, but it's getting the attention of the right people that are going to buy the tickets to then help with the donations.
And also to contribute a lot of money too.
Exactly.
And these are people who have seen everything.
Yeah, totally. And they're getting invited to thousands of events,
right.
and their calendars are way booked. So you want to make sure that I believe that our job is to make sure that they get that event gets noticed and the right people attend, because then it helps with their mission to, get the funds to help grow their charity. So that's super critical.
And what about when it's not a nonprofit, but it's a corporation, right?
It's the same thing. Too.
Are you reading the mission statement
or their branding guidelines?
The brand book,
if it's baccarat, we're not going to send something that's like tacky and crazy. I mean, not that we would do that, but we follow their exact red and their proper Pantone inks, their proper colors. Because you have to make sure that they're sending that consistent brand message. And that applies from even in my world, like in weddings too. It's like I have that branding background before I even started Ceci. And so I started doing that for the couples, like creating a logo for them, creating a custom print that carries all the way over and starts branding the event. So, it's kind of the same, philosophy, I guess. And, couples now love it because it's like, now, especially with social, it's like you have to have your personal brand image.
Oh yeah. That's a big deal right now.
Yeah.
I also want to ask you about, establishing partnerships, because you've got some amazing stuff going on. From what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, you launched your first retail collection selling nationwide and established exclusive partnerships with the Breakers Hotel, German-based paper company. I don't know how to say it. Gamund?
Gamund, yeah.
Gamund.
I'm not doing it properly in German, but it's okay. We'll work it out.
But and also others. So I'm curious, what has been your process for conceiving of, approaching, negotiating, launching, managing, such partnerships?
Yeah.
That seems overwhelming to me.
I think it's just, if it feels right, like I have this wild desire to grow a brand and something that's going to live beyond me. And I think at the time, like those were just, the paper company Gamund was someone who I loved. I was already designing with their papers, and I happened to have met the owner, and we hit it off. And I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if we could do a collaboration?
So you initiated this.
Usually,
and I'm not surprised. No,
I'm
but
always
I love
listening.
it.
See, you got to go after it.
You have to go for it.
I'm an ideas person, and I have the ideas, and I just threw it out there. And if it sticks, it sticks, and we go for it. And but I don't mean to say that you just try everything. Like it has to make sense from a branding point of view.
Yeah.
And they're authentically, I loved their paper. I was using it already, and they're one of the top luxury paper mills in the world. And, Breakers Hotel as well. Like they're outstanding. We already have a ton of clients together. It just made sense.
How do you, two questions. How do you figure out how to price yourself?
The magic question.
Right. That's for any of us in the field, in any business, so, we're almost, especially creative business, we're almost reaching out of the air in a sense.
So that's the problem. You just,
I don't like to think of competition. I don't think that way.
I think you just touched on a tricky subject for sure. And one that I'm extremely passionate about, because I think we all work extremely hard in this industry. And because, like you said, how do I say this nicely? Like, I think we are just grabbing numbers out of thin air, which I think is the wrong way.
And I think a lot of people undervalue. And then it just erodes the market.
Completely. And we're giving too much away for free. And it's a big problem. So I don't know how much you want to get into there.
Let's go for it. Let's go for it. Let's change things, Ceci. I'm dead serious too.
Okay. My biggest key thing about pricing is that you have to know how much time you're spending on it. If you're a service person, how much time are you really spending? Because what you're selling is your time, and you're trading time on earth for money, basically. So as you grow, and like for me, as I started having children and like I got married, I didn't want to just slave away and like work around the clock, and I needed to have a balance. And so it hit me where very early on, when I was just literally like, with my paintings or whatever, I was afraid to charge for that time. I was afraid to be like, oh, hey, I can paint this for you, but it's going to be an extra, some of them take 5 hours, some take 20, 30, 2-3 days. You never know. And that was thousands of dollars I was giving away for free, because I was afraid to say, I want to do this for you, but it's going to cost X. And as soon as I stood up for myself, and because I was literally like 3 a.m., trying to get it done. And it was just not fair. It wasn't fair to me, and it wasn't fair to the clients, to be honest, because I wasn't at my best painting for them. Right. And I think you have to realize, like, I started paying attention to the time, and then I started being
so you actually literally kept track.
Yes.
Okay.
And you have to there's apps now on your phone that you can just hit the button and be like, okay, it's logging to this client. And when you start to do that, it's like the biggest eye opener.
I'll bet.
Because in your head, you're like, oh, it'll just be 5 minutes, but then it's 5 hours, you know? And I'm totally guilty of that. And I think as creatives and as passionate people, you're like, oh, no big deal. I'll just throw that in. It's included in my fee. And oh, I'm already charging $5,000 and that's a lot. So I don't need to be paid for that. You know, it's that kind of thing that I think is really wrong. I mean, I always try to think of like, any other businesses, like imagine if you're at a restaurant and you're like, oh, this table's having so much fun. They're so great. You know, like we should just give them a dinner for free. I mean, they would, you know, it's like, I'm afraid they ordered another round. Should I charge them? I mean, of course you charge them.
Right. That's a good point.
You know, like what other business just gives you, I don't know. I don't want to get anyone upset with me, but I think there's no reason why, because we are real businesses and have plenty of bills to pay and love doesn't pay the bills.
That's right.
So I kind of faced my fears and stood up for myself. And when I started explaining the value to the clients of what I was doing and why I'm charging, I mean, it's a custom piece of art that I'm literally painting from scratch and hand drawing and like it's hours and hours.
Which is also the result of years and years and years and years and years of studying and honing your craft.
Totally.
And to me, that also relates to a certain value.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, it's not even literally
what's
the
Picasso's
hours.
favorite quote where he like signed a cocktail napkin and was like, it's $10,000. And they were like, what? You just did it. He's like, it's years of that, you know?
That's right.
I mean, it's the same thing, you know? So anyways, I'm proud because I finally stood up for myself and now, you know, our clients pay us to paint it hourly and even some have bought the original painting and paid an extra fee.
Wow.
So,
now, do you even bring up the, when you're explaining in certain situations, the amount of hours just to illustrate the point to them?
You have to. And that's what I think, even whether you're a planner or a photographer or a florist, you have to say, listen, I spend 100 hours or sometimes planners do 500 hours from it could be a year that you're working with them. If there's no boundaries, if it's unlimited, you have me 24/7, then like you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Otherwise, they're making assumptions, which is usually going to be far under.
Completely. And so, and when you're like, cause I mean, I did this exercise with a planner friend who charged $2,500 a flat fee. And I was like, how much hours do you actually spend to plan this event? She's like, oh my God, so much, like probably like 500 hours. And I did the math and I'm like, you realize you'd be making more $5 an hour and you could be making more working at McDonald's. You know, like, do you want this job? And like, to be honest, who in their right mind would ever accept a proper job if, you know, the employer was like, hey, you're amazing. I'm going to give you this job offer and I'm going to pay you $5 an hour. You'd be like, no, I need more salary. So isn't it ironic that in our own businesses, we are afraid to, and I'm saying it as we collectively like are afraid to sort of stand up for like what it's.
But also, okay, so I'm not asking you your hourly rate, but how did you determine though your hourly rate?
Yeah. So I think you have to look at your cost of goods or your cost of your overhead and all of that and like what you feel you want to make a year. So if you want to make $50,000, $25,000, $100,000, $2,000, $1 million, like there's only so many days in the year and hours in the day.
Well, and so, if we could stop right there, because I've thought about this kind of thing and I've thought to myself, how much do I want to make? And then that right there will freeze a lot of people. You know, that right there is like, well, I can't say I want to make X amount of.
Why not?
You know,
I think we're all worth it.
Well, and think about, like you say, not only the cost, but what kind of a place do you want to live in? What does that cost? What about the car? What about building in vacations? You know, how much do vacations what cost? What about rest? You know,
or the gas that you have to buy to go to the cake appointment or the dressing.
And so whatever it is right. Whether you want to make 100,000, 500,000, it is what it is, and then you know. And
you do the math backwards and you're like, okay, actually I should be getting $200 an hour or $100 an hour or whatever you feel is good.
How many hours a week do you want to work? I mean, all of that. Why not? Isn't it interesting? Why are we all so afraid to do that?
I don't know. Trust me. I mean, look at what lawyers do. They're in the service business. This is where I get super fired up. They make so much money because it's every 15 minutes because they have a system and it's the like authoritative rule and that's just the standard and everyone hates paying their lawyers, but they do it. We should raise the bar a little.
Why not us too?
I'm not saying we have to like rip our clients off, but and that's not it at all. I'm just saying we need to like raise the bar a little. And if everybody did it, because those that are giving it away for free and guarantees, I know that who wants to really work for free? Nobody.
I want to be sure you know the wonderful news of our latest show, Stop and Smell the Roses, with acclaimed lifestyle and event design expert Preston Bailey. Not only will he share the secrets, tools, and technologies behind his extraordinary ability to create a theatrical environment out of any space, you will also discover more about the man behind the magic. Preston will reveal how his focus on personal growth has been the root of his professional success, and you'll have the opportunity for him to answer your questions along the way. Plus, Preston will be inviting onto the show many of the star celebrities he has worked with in the past, so you don't want to miss a single episode. We also have another great show on the Wedding Biz Network, The Business of Being Creative, with host Sean Lowe. Since debuting, his show has really taken off, and he's continuing to bring you the creative business advice he's shared with accomplished industry notables. Be sure to take advantage of Sean's talkback opportunity by recording questions and comments from right there in each episode's show notes. So, if you are a creative who is turning your craft into a business or want to take it to another level, head to theweddingbiznetwork.com and take a listen to Stop and Smell the Roses with Preston Bailey and The Business of Being Creative with Sean Lowe. That's theweddingbiznetwork.com. Here's another question then. How do you, I
hope I'm not offending anybody.
Are you kidding? This is fantastic. Okay. No. This is a great thing to talk about. So I also, I mentioned earlier, I don't think about competition. It's not from a perspective of arrogance necessarily. I just had the same thought. In the music side of my business, I do see it just completely eroding. And I offer way more than just a great band, for example. Right. There's so much more that goes into it, which is very different, and have to explain that to the client and value. But still, though, do you ever, in spite of that, think about what is going on in the industry, or are you just kind of keeping your narrow lane of, look, period, this is what I need to earn, this is what I want to earn, this is what I feel I'm worth? Do you just have kind of that kind of a perspective?
I think you have to always be aware. And I think it's just like if you're going to launch a product in the retail world, like, are you going to be Chanel or are you going to be Old Navy? Right. Are you selling, what are you selling? And even if it's your service, like, a lot of times people are like, well, you have it so much easier because you're a product. I'm like, no, I'm still a service. An event planner is a service, and a florist is still selling the product, which is the florals, but they're doing a service, which is the labor. So I think we all are very similar in a way, So I think you have to look at it like, how am I positioning myself as a brand, and what do my competitors charge in that area? And then you have to also analyze, are those competitors actually my competitors? Meaning, are they pricing themselves right? Because there are a lot of planners. Just industry people.
Yeah. No, it's
but, cool. That are not, I wouldn't say they're necessarily pricing themselves accurately either. So I know when I first started, I was so scared to charge the prices that I did. I was like, well, people really pay that much for invitations? Oh my gosh. But I also knew if they didn't, I would never have a business.
You know what?
Like, I could never pay my bills.
There's a point right here. So I was talking to Harmony Walton, and we were talking about when the recession hit. And she was saying, this is really important. She was saying back in 2009, a lot of her friends in various parts of the industry, not just her zone, were lowering their prices, scared, lowering. And she was saying, I can't afford to lower my prices.
Right, exactly.
And I remember what she said, and you're sparking this right now too, is that she thought, okay, what is it that I'm already providing in my services that I'm not talking about with a client? Yep. And she started to think that way. And this really affected me too, to then start putting a description to it and naming it.
Yeah.
And she did not have to drop her prices, and she did fine at that time.
And that's what I mean. You have to stand up for your value. First, you have to define what your value is. Like, are you a makeup artist? You're not just making people look pretty. Like, you have to talk about what's underneath. Like, what is it that's special about you that no one else has, because no one is you? And like, what are the other things? And that's what I had to do with my business, and like with my, the artistry, and just in general, like, we are not just a stationery store, like, not at all, and we have to really be confident enough to talk to that and make sure that whether you're on the phone or you're meeting face to face, that you're not shying away. Cause I think it is hard to sell yourself. I know I'm very humble, and I'm always like, oh, why do I have to tell everyone? It's so awkward. And like, you just kind of
got to educate them though.
But if you're not doing it, then no one else is going to know.
Who's doing it.
Right?
That's right. Well, what do you do when there is a situation in the economy? Let's go to the worst case. For example, a recession, here we are in service industry, and disposable income is sometimes the first go.
Yeah.
And as we both know from 2009, I ran into this. Even the clients who could still afford anything did not want to appear as if they're spending.
So you just give alternate solutions.
Like, for example, do you have any? So
I think that everyone loves choices. So if we're designing, we always love to show high, medium, large, or like, here's the dream and here's all alternate ways. And if you start with the kind of bottom that's less expensive and you build on that, and you're like, here's where it could go, then they don't feel like you're ripping them off, or they don't feel like they're choosing the most expensive option. They could choose somewhere in between, or they could go to the most expensive option if they want to, or they could go with the basic one. But I think when you just give one choice, or you're just like, I'm only this, then, and that's it, take it or leave it, then you're kind of like pigeonholing yourself
up. Yeah.
But clients don't know what they don't know, especially in our wedding world, because we're innovators. We're creating for everybody out of our minds. Like that's not something you find on Pinterest, or, I mean, you see past jobs, right? Past inspirations. But I think as a true expert or innovator in your field, that's at least what I strive to do, is that you can look at a Pinterest board, but they don't know, you know what I mean? Like they don't know yet what could be because it's in your head.
Yeah.
So I think it's up to us as the experts to be able to share that and say, I know you wanted this, and let's talk about what you loved about this Pinterest board, but here's like how I can take those little nuggets that you loved and make them even more amazing. And here's 3 or 4 ways that we could do it.
Yeah.
And then they're feeling like, wow, they really heard me and I got options. So like, which one fits best for me and where do I feel comfortable spending? So I definitely know what you mean. And our clientele certainly has, and it doesn't matter if you're spending $1 or $1,000 or whatever. Everyone's conscious about the image that they're sending. You just have to make the appropriate one. So it doesn't mean that you have to be so over the top to be awesome, you know?
Yeah. No, I get it. Well, one thing too, in a little bit of a different direction too, in terms of dealing with the really super, super, super high-end clients, like you've dealt with your clients.
Can I add one more thing? Because I do want to say one more thing, sorry, before we go off on this tangent.
Of course. Also,
if you don't have like pricing options or products, the other thing is if you know your hours, then you can cut back and say, I'm happy to spend, you know, let's say as a planner, whatever, you had 200 hours in your contract or whatever it is. You could then be like, lower my price, but I lower my hours. So you're not working twice as hard, you know, and you're still being more efficient, I think.
That's right.
Does that make sense? So,
yeah,
and then you can be like, if you need more time, which they always do, then I can add on more hours and you can make more money incrementally as you grow.
See, what I love also that I'm hearing, the thread that's going through all of this, is you are not letting up at any point here.
No, but you're offering solutions that could be affordable, but you're not sacrificing yourself as basically the guinea pig or the one who's going to the sacrificial lamb that just then works 3 times as hard and gets 3 times less. Like, why?
No, I think this is a really important message that people need to get, and don't have to be afraid of it. You know, I mean, people might say, "Well, Ceci's already earned the right to do that." Well, no, that is how you got there, was through this process.
Yeah. You have to start there, otherwise you can't go backwards.
You've had clients like the president, international royalty, Sean Diddy Combs.
Is that his name now?
I don't even.
I think
so
it's like
I'm like,
or
what?
Something.
Who
I forgot.
is it? Puff Daddy, P. Diddy,
Daddy Love.
Right.
I forgot.
Katherine Heigl, Hugo Boss, and so much more. What are those relationships like? Is there a different type of a pressure, or do you just see it as, hey, you know?
I'm funny because I'm not really. I mean, I guess I'm not. I know this might sound funny, but I'm not really like starstruck. I mean, I'm flattered and I'm super beyond amazed and grateful, but I just really try to treat them as normal people. And even with
royalty, like, you know, the eyes are on you on that one.
Yeah, but the eyes are on me always.
That's true. Well, especially in your business, it's all about the eyes. I don't ever want to treat
anyone less than. Like, I'm grateful honestly, for every single client, whether, like I said, whether they're spending $1 or $100,000 or 1,000. It doesn't matter the price point. Like, they're all going through the Ceci experience, and I always want every client to feel that way. So whether you're a celebrity or royalty or just Sally Sue who appreciates great graphic design, like, they should all be treated the same. So, I mean, that's not to say that, you know, some more are more demanding than others.
Now, I do want to go there. Here's what I want to say.
And they definitely challenge you,
well,
but that's okay. Some are very pleasant and beautiful too.
Perfect bridge into this. So Tara Gerard told me, she said, you have to ask Ceci about Russia. Some of these brides, I mean, we're not just saying it's Russians. Let me just be very clear. We're not saying that. But there's some specific stories about some invitations. And can you tell us some of that?
I wonder what she's getting at. I mean, I don't know. The one that maybe she's thinking about when the Princess of Qatar wanted me to design her invitations, which we did. And she thought that once they were signed off, they should just be delivered immediately to Qatar. And meanwhile, it's thousands and thousands of pieces. And it takes us normally like 4 to 6 weeks to produce things like that. And she wanted it in less than a week. And so when you give us a hoop where you want us to jump through. We're like, okay, how high? So we literally had to produce them extremely like lightning fast without sacrificing the quality, because talk about the impression and the worry. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the royal family. Like this is major. And we had to not only FedEx them, we had to escort them ourselves, all the boxes on the airplane, and take them to Qatar to deliver to the princess. And we did.
Wow. What was that like?
It was intense, but we did it. And we're so grateful. And like for us, it's part of the challenge and the excitement of, the business. It keeps you on your toes. So it's fun.
What about, speaking of that, what about the business aspect of it? I mean, again, I'm understanding from your stories with your father and all of that. But in terms of managing, like even to move here where we are today, you expanded in your office, and obviously I'm sure this costs more than the last place. What about just managing the business aspect of your business and it not taking away from the creative part and not draining you? How do you do that?
Okay. So it's so challenging. And I think as creatives, you have to it's really hard. I'm not going to lie. You have to be really disciplined. This is my advice. You have to take a step back from the weeds of like the day-to-day doing and plan and be strategic about what is the vision for your business and where you want it to go. And then create the systems that your team has to follow. And you're talking about like with employees and stuff?
All of it. Okay. Like for example, what are some systems that you would say are the most critical?
So in the beginning, when I was wearing all the hats and juggling all the balls, I would book clients, and then I noticed they would all just be like, when am I going to get this? And when am I going to see this? And no. And it was 1,000 questions coming at me at any given moment. And I could never focus on the design because everybody was just chomping at the bit for something. So I developed a system that basically when they sign up, they get a schedule and they get exactly the deadlines of where they're going to get things. So right off the bat, we're setting expectations. And I think that's what it comes down to, is setting expectations for the team.
I was going to say internally and
externally. Yeah. And so then you book your calendar up and that these are the deadlines, and I can focus on those deadlines in a prioritized manner and a sort of sanity manner.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's always things like phone calls that come, or emergencies that pop up, or fires you have to put out, or things that go wrong that you didn't expect to go wrong, or the project comes back from the press, or the special paper that you wanted is now discontinued and you have to figure out and problem solve. And that's constantly my day of juggling everything.
Yeah.
But I think you just have to try and create order and be proactive instead of reactive. Because when you're reactive, and if that's the norm, then you're on this annoying hamster wheel.
Go that way.
So easy. And you will never feel, at least for me, I feel you will never have sanity. You will just be like on this hamster wheel of madness of like, I just got to do. And you're just like constantly reacting. Even on email, like I try, it's hard, but if you can organize your day, like, okay, I'm going to do social media at 9 a.m. and then I'm going to do my emails for 2 hours and then I'm going to have my meetings. And like,
do you do that? Do you set yourself up that way? Yeah.
I try and when I do, it works extremely well. Or like, for example, my paintings, I block off when they're scheduled for like Fridays or Mondays. And then I have other stuff going on. I mean, of course, if an emergency meeting pops up, I'll take it if it's a super important priority, but at least you know what I mean? I'm trying to create like a structure.
And all. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're able to like have a little peace of mind and sort of control of things. And I mean, it's not easy, but I try.
Well, but I'm also thinking about all that you do. I mean, when I was getting ready to come here and see you, I was, reading up on you, and I was just thinking to myself, no, it wasn't at all. It was more like, how is she doing all this? So another thing I know that you do, you launched ccstyle.com in 2010, right? A lifestyle magazine. Can you tell me something about that too? I mean, wow, to take that on top of everything else, but I love the concept.
Well, thanks. I mean, ultimately the desire for it, or the push for it, was when, the whole blogging and social media and everything became like a priority. Like you had to do it in your work. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to even find time to do all this? Because I was already maxed and I feel maxed every day, but you can't, I hope that no one ever thinks I'm too busy, because, as a small business owner, you're always going to be juggling a lot of hats and you need the business at all times. Yeah. So thank God I'm busy, I guess. But I realized, okay, if I'm going to do this, it can't just be like a fly by night random like blog whenever I want. And then I'm just like everyone else. I guess you kind of maybe are picking this up about me. I'm like always want to do things different and sort of put a different statement on things and make it worthwhile for my brand and help people get to know me a little bit more and create that connection and show that the goal was to show people how as a designer, I find inspiration in the world and the things that I love, from fashion to, jewelry to just like art and design and all that beautiful stuff in the world, and how as a creator that inspires me and how it turns into my work, and then showcasing the invitations and then the parties that go with it. So it became this really beautiful and really great resource for people, whether you're looking for just beautiful images to be inspired by for entertaining or for life, or you just want to find a great venue or a great, musician or photographer or invitations. But ultimately it's tying all of my loves and all into the work and was my answer to something a little bit bigger than a blog.
Yeah. No, I think it's wonderful. And I also know that you speak to women in business, designers, wedding industry pros, and a lot more. I found one thing that said you speak also about, and I'm not sure if it's women, everybody, I think it can apply to everybody, but escaping their ruts and separating themselves from the pack.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess this is kind of a common thread. I guess what's coming up is just the same thing I just said is I think we all get a little bit stuck in letting the business run you instead of you running the business. And definitely money is a huge component of that. So, and I think I'm very passionate about helping other small businesses who have no idea how to do it, or they're afraid, or they're like, how do I know how to do pricing? Or how do I stand up to clients? Or how do I even get clients? How do I even market myself? It's a hard thing to do. And, I'm grateful, I guess, that I have the business side and the artsy side. And I thank my dad for that, as we talked about. Yeah. But not many people, can wear both hats. And I get that. And I'm not sitting here saying I knew or do know everything either. I think a lot of it is just trial and error and good instincts and going for it.
Yeah.
But I love being able to help people because no one helped me, and I felt very lonely. And there is still times where you're very lonely, and it's lonely at the top, they say.
Well, no, and also helping. Help. Well, and people say, I was even just reading a thing on the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu, a wonderful book about the two of them, and they were talking about when you are having such a hard time and you're feeling, if you go help other people, it sounds obvious, but we have to be reminded. You're also helping yourself and feel less lonely, and you're feeding yourself.
Totally. And if I can help people get out of their own ruts or realize that all that negativity is just nonsense, and that really you just need direction and strategy and somebody on the outside looking in to be like, oh, this is great. Here's how you're going to do it. And I can strategize and organize their whole plan for them in an hour. And it's just something that I love doing and comes easy to me. Then they're like, wow, I have all sorts of clarity now. I have focus and direction, and I'm inspired, and I can do it. And they do it.
Yeah. Well, and I know that's one of the things specifically you do is in mentoring is helping people transform their strategy, branding, and design for the better. What are some of the common mistakes that you find people make in that sense?
So number one is they're branded, and the image they're putting out there is completely wrong. And I guess just meaning you go to their website and it looks like, I'll give you an example. This is really funny, but so one of my consulting / branding clients, she came to me because she wanted to be completely rebranded. She didn't understand why she wasn't getting the clients that she wanted. She's like, I can do higher end events. I want higher end events. I want to be the go-to in Salt Lake City. And I looked at her site, and it was just singing all the wrong messages. The images were outdated. The logo looked like a strip club. I'm sorry. She knows it. I told her. I'm very honest. I'm like, the name is not unique.
Someone's got to tell her.
It's got a martini glass, and it's silver and red and black, and you look
funny.
I'm ready to, it's a completely different message than what you want to be. So, and a lot of times, from a branding perspective, you have to be able to get that impression right away.
Yes.
People need to look at you and go,
especially
I get it.
Today with this lack of focus and all
completely.
of that.
They have to get it in a second. And so if your image and your website and your social media presence and all of that is not buttoned up, then that's the biggest mistake, number one, because you won't get the clients calling you. They'll look at you and be like, oh, they just don't look right. Or they're sending a message of distrust or inconsistency that means they're not really going to deliver something quality to me. So I helped rebrand her and was like, we're not showing pictures that are anything other than Utah. Like, you are the go-to for Utah. I don't want to see Hawaii. I don't want to see San Diego. Like, unless the message is clear and unless everything that you do goes into that bucket, then it's allowed. Otherwise it's not. Like, you have to define those facets.
Yeah.
So you can attract the right kind of clients. So I think a lot of times people are eager to just put anything up, and it's like, but wait, if you're tired of doing mason jar weddings or whatever, like all I see is barn weddings on your site. So take them down.
Well, I love what you just said, attracting the right clients. You got to, because I do believe that's something, it's kind of hard to really see that clearly, but that is what happens. It's maybe a dynamic that's hard to explain,
right?
But it does exist.
For sure. And you have to actually do a self-analysis. Like, go to your own website, look at your business cards, look at your Instagram, look at your Facebook. Are they all buttoned up? Do they look the same?
And is it cohesive?
Is it cohesive? Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, when I say the same, I don't mean like they have to be like carbon copies, but like, is your logo the same in every place? Or is your logo something, a different, sometimes people have different logos and you're like, wait, what? Yeah. Or the name of your website's different than your brand and like things like that. Or you have a Gmail account instead of like your business account. I mean, little things like that just are sending subliminal messages to your potential clients.
Well, see, it is subliminal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Very subtle, but powerful.
Right. Exactly.
Also, I want to come back to, in terms of helping women, there's a quote, this is the last quote I'm going to do. I
you did do your homework.
I did. Yes, I did. But this one I really like. It's a bit long, but I really want to say it out loud and hear what you have to say about it. So you said, it was in an article helping female entrepreneurs. You said, personally, I never allow anything to stand in the way, and I don't believe in excuses. But I do believe we as women have it a little harder at times in the workforce. The expectations and responsibilities of all we have to judge, especially working mothers, can be daunting and sometimes get the best of us. Additionally, I found that we put a lot of the pressure and guilt on ourselves. We tend to be very self-critical and extremely hard on ourselves. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know, even though I'm a guy, I mean, as a father, I can resonate with some of that, but I know with women, it's a whole nother level.
Yeah. Well, it's the mom guilt, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's also, I have entrepreneur guilt. I have mom guilt, just like wife guilt. I mean, the more you have on your plate and the more kids you have, or the older you get, I feel like the more responsibility, and it's just like it gets more and more intense. Mm-hmm. And we also put a lot of the pressure on ourselves, and it's just natural, but I don't know. I think it's completely okay that you can delegate and you can get a nanny or get a daycare. And like, if the nanny needs to like pack your kids' lunch, it's okay. Like they're going to be fine as long as they're fed. And like, if you can't pull it off, like I had to start letting go of those kind of things. Like even cleaning my house. Like I grew up, my mom would always clean the house. She was not a working mom. Uh-huh. So I have this vision of like the perfect mother who was there for us at all times, so that definitely has something to do with it. And I certainly want to be there for my children. But like she had all the time to do all that housekeeping, and I personally don't like it, number one. And number two, I was like on my weekends when I hardly have any time and I want to just be snuggling with my kids.
Present with them.
I don't want to be scrubbing the toilets.
That's right.
Dealing with, the awful like Cinderella chores. I'm like, no. So I looked into it. I'm like, cleaning ladies aren't that expensive, but they are lifesavers. So I think that's where I was like, okay, I need to let go of all this pressure. And little by little, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make room for this and like budget for this and be like, it's okay. Because I need to take care of myself too.
Yes. Well, I would even say, I don't know how some people will take this, but in order to take care of others, if we're not taking good care of ourselves first, what do we have available to give?
No, totally. And it's not easy. I mean, there's still, right now, I'm like, how do I find time to go to the gym? Or like, I need to like do more me things and like, not selfishly,
but
like
struggling with this balance.
Right?
I think so.
I think it's just, and that's why we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves.
Yes.
Like we're all in it doing the exact same thing. And even though Instagram makes you look so fabulous and like, it's so easy and like, oh, look at me. It's really just a facade. And we're all just working hard, trying to just keep all the balls in the air.
Well,
my favorite, I do have to add
go ahead.
This is one last quote, which I love because it reminded me when I said the balls in the air. So I think of it often that you're juggling. You're always going to be juggling a lot of balls and you just have to make sure the glass ones don't break, right? They don't fall. So you're going to let the rubber ones bounce as you're juggling. You're like, that one can bounce a little bit by the side, but the glass ones, you got to keep going, like keep them in the air because then it's like, those are the priorities. But the rubber ones, you can just pick back up when it's time.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that.
Don't let the glass ones break.
So you have said so much. This is really wonderful, Ceci. I'm wondering if you were giving a master class to No, to already, let's say people who are already, somewhat experienced in the industry, but, they want to rise to another level. What would you say are some of the biggest tips and advice that you would give someone generally in this industry?
Gosh, a lot of it I've said, but a masterclass I just think it's, to not give up is one of them. Like, you got to just stand up for yourself, face the fear early on and don't let it get in your way, because it's a killer for sure. Stand up for your worth for sure. I mean, everyone, no matter what level you're at, goes through struggles. So try not to be so hard on yourself, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I want to encourage everybody you got to check out this site, and we're going to put it in the show notes, cecinewyork.com, CECI, if you don't already know, cecinewyork.com. I also want to mention, Ceci, I saw the online shop of collections. I mean, beautiful. I was blown away. Yeah. So I mean, my God, I recommend the color's so vibrant and the depth, and it's like even on a screen, they're jumping out at you. I love it. So I encourage everyone to go look at the online shop. I know that, isn't this true? People can consult with you, commission you. I mean, check out the site. It's all there. What is the best way to find out more about you? Is it that website? What is your social media handle? Same thing?
No, Instagram is definitely a great one. Ceci New York is just at Ceci New York, CECI, and then NEWYORK. And then I have Ceci Johnson as well, if you want to deeper dive into more of the businesswoman, entrepreneur, mom, juggling life and it all, my fashion design passions. That's just at Ceci Johnson, CECIJOHNSON. So Instagram's amazing. Our website, of course, but Instagram's very much the up to date, and we'll keep you posted on all the happenings there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I loved talking to you. Your enthusiasm, your passion, helping. Great tips and advice and inspiration. So thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this re-release of an earlier episode on the wedding biz. If you enjoyed it, please share it with 3 friends or colleagues who you think would also benefit from hearing it. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Wedding Biz. And you can follow me on Clubhouse at Andy Kushner. And be sure to join the Wedding Biz Club on Clubhouse. We'll catch you next time on The Wedding Biz.